to be an incredibly abridged version of all the things that are happening. Anything that really had a purely consumer focus to it, going to be kind of skipping over and just be doing the things that have kind of got a bit of a developer angle to them. So to start with, we jumped all the way to version 26 for everything because 26 is bigger than 19 and therefore that's better. So that means that it's iOS 26, iPadOS, visionOS, watchOS, tvOS, macOS, visionOS, all of the OSs jump straight to 26, and we finally have aligned version numbers. No more having to remember which version of iOS 17 equates to watchOS. I have no idea. The big thing though was that we got a brand new design. This was the heavily rumored and kind of slightly spoiled. But it's all based around the idea of what Apple's calling liquid glass in a name that only Apple would say with a straight face. So the kind of the metaphor for this UI is that everything is being made of these physical objects of glass that are reflecting and refracting all the light that's going underneath them. They're picking up the light sources around them, and it's a very I guess I would say bouncy animations to everything. As things are moving around, they kind of expand and shrink back. Subjectively, I quite like it. Readability is a bit of a concern with this. I expect they're going to have to dial it back a bit. It is something that it looks quite a bit better in person than it does on slides like this. It's something that, yeah, it does look better on device. Probably needs to be dialed back though. I did also like iOS 7, so I don't think my opinion really matters. With this, we did also get a new standard set of icons from Apple, and this is kind of what they're pushing for all the new designs. There's also new versions of icons, so you can now tint your icons in light mode, which was my mum's most requested feature, so she's quite happy. There's also a clear version of all your icons, which looks cool for about 10 seconds until you realize you can't find anything anymore. We get a new app called Icon Composer for designing these icons. It's very similar to what the visionOS icon designer was like in Xcode, where everything's based on kind of layers that stack on top of each other, and then there's some effects you can apply to things to kind of give a bit of visual distinction. The system will attempt to glassify icons for developers if they're simple enough. So you can see Discord here, because it's kind of a simple-ish shape on a solid background. It's going to attempt to glassify for you. Whereas NetNewsWire, being a more complex icon, it just gives up. This feels like the kind of thing designers are going to be really cranky about, and I would expect it to get pulled out. I also thought that about tinted icons, so we'll see. What this is going to mean for us though, so it's the standard pattern. If you've got an existing app and you run it on version 26, it's going to look how it looks now, no changes. Once you build against Xcode 26, you are going to get any system components jumping to the new UI. There is a plist value we can use to temporarily override it and switch back to the old system, though they've said that this is going to be going away fairly shortly. Apple Intelligence got a few mostly consumer-facing features, though we did get one big thing in that the foundation models have now been opened up to us so that developers can use them in our own apps. It's sitting in front of there's a framework that sits in front of it, and it stretches all the way from you can just throw a string at it, get a string back, all the way to there's some nice abstractions that sit on top of it. It is purely the 3 billion parameter model, which is the one that runs on device. We don't get access to any of the private cloud compute APIs that Apple's using. And that means that it's kind of optimized for summarization, classification, revision. It doesn't have world knowledge, and it doesn't really have any reasoning capabilities. You have to kind of slice up any tasks you give it to yourself. One of the big things though is that it kind of has an abstraction layer that can sit on top of it called guided generation, and this is going to allow you to get structured models back, structured Swift models back from the model. So you just need to apply these two of these new macros to your model, and then you'll get it back. So it's the @generable, and then you can also provide hints to the model about what a field represents with the @guide macro. It now means that when you send a request to the model, you will be getting exactly your models back. There's no more having to deal with any of the parsing yourself. Apple's saying that the models then also help prompt your models help prompt their model about, I should have used a better word than model, help the LLM to be able to make better generation because it knows the structure it's working towards. And it's a nice abstraction. We also have tool calling built in now, and these allow you to give tools to the model so that it can perform actions while it's generating a response. These can be to either get information from the world, so it can be things like querying a Maps API or a Weather API, or it can also be then querying into your app. So the example they've been giving is, say you have a travel app and you want to give it some way to query the saved locations that the user has in your app. So you give the list of models to, you give the list of tools to the model, and then it determines how and when to use them. Instructions are a way that you can kind of guide the model for what it's going to do. So these are things about how it should respond, what sort of, like, should it be terse? Should it be flowery with its language? Should it rhyme? It's been trained so that it will give far more emphasis to instructions over the prompt. They're saying this should help mitigate prompt injection, though even they claim that this is not a solution to this. You do still need to be careful. Nothing's foolproof here. Onto the platforms, it was probably one of the lighter years, I would have said. So starting off with iOS and iPadOS, iPadOS now has the ability to run background tasks for long-running jobs, like, say, video exporting. So you can now background your app and your job continues to run and isn't going to be getting throttled or killed. Mac-like windowing support is coming to the iPad. So previously with something like Stage Manager, we didn't have the traffic lights and you couldn't freely resize a window. It would kind of jump between preset size classes. Now it is completely freeform, and I expect there's going to be some apps that are going to have to do a fair bit of work now to support an arbitrary window size. Extension Kit was something that was kind of brought over in iOS 16, though it seems like in a very limited state. Now we're getting the full-fat version, and this is going to allow iOS and iPadOS apps to freely communicate and invoke each other. So you would define a contract for what your extension is providing and an extension what you want it to provide to you, and then you can fully launch a completely separate app from within your own app. It doesn't have to be from the same developer, and then you even get an XPC communication channel to talk to each other. An example could be, say, a photo editing app that can then launch different third-party camera apps and have the full-fat version of their app launched from within theirs, say Halide or something. macOS got some new features, Spotlight being the big new one. So menu bar actions now get automatically donated into Spotlight to be searched when your app's in the foreground, and then you can also provide custom ones. And we also get a clipboard history now being built into the system. iOS Live Activities now show up on the Mac automatically, similar to how a lot of the continuity features are existing that work. And Metal is also getting the standard set of features that have been making their way across the PC gaming space. Things like AI upscaling, so render at a lower resolution, then use AI to upscale to a higher one, or for doing interstitial frames being AI generated, and things like denoising ray traced images. visionOS probably got the most updates given its relative immaturity. Some of the highlights are that there's now APIs for scene restoration and controlling which window gets brought back to the foreground. This was an existing problem where you could see apps could get themselves into a weird state where they would only want to relaunch with an accessory window, not your main window. There was a horrible host of hacks you could do, and even then you would still end up in odd states. Xcode got a fair few big changes this year. The big one is that Swift Assist is dead, long live AI Assistant. And this is a way to query a large language model from within Xcode and do the agentic coding things that tools like Rue and Klein have been doing-ish in a limited fashion. So you can ask questions, you can generate code, you can have it generate fixits for you, and it will use your project as context, so it can look at multiple files, edit multiple files at the same time. Out of the box, it's got support for ChatGPT, but other model providers like Anthropic with Claude are also provided, along with you can also even run local models, which I expect enterprise clients could be more interested in. Build system got a few touches. Explicitly built modules is now enabled by default. It was an option in a couple of previous versions. And the open source build system, so they recently open sourced they recently open sourced Xcode build. That's now being brought to Swift PM. So we're not going to see a kind of bifurcation depending on how you're building a Swift code. One of the lovely ones is that we now get playgrounds directly embedded inline in your files. So similar to the preview macro, you can just do pound playground, and then you get a playground-like interface where the preview would be. So you can inspect models. It's got some things like, say, the map will actually show a little rendered map kit view for you. This is going to be excellent for kind of debugging issues or even providing documentation alongside your models. Swift 6.2 also got some additions. So we got some concurrency changes to make it more approachable. Now by default for new projects, and then you can also opt in for existing ones where it would just say everything is on the main actor until I tell you otherwise. This is kind of going to allow you to push off thinking about concurrency until you actually start writing truly concurrent code. We also get some changes where non-isolated functions will now inherit the isolation of the actor they're called from. So it means that if you've got a non-isolated function, you call it from the main actor, that now runs on the main actor. Previously that wasn't the case and caused a lot of confusion. We're getting pre-built binaries with Swift syntax, which meant, because previously if you want to write the teeniest tiny little macro, you had to pull in all of Swift syntax and increase your build time by minutes. It is currently available in Xcode 16.4 and Swift 6.1 as a preview, though it's pretty buggy at the moment. Say like at the jobby job, it doesn't work on CI for us because it doesn't quite work with Xcode build. We're also getting LLDB improvements for asynchronous code. So now as it's stepping into a task and jumping between threads, the debugger can now nicely follow that rather than kind of giving up, calling back multiple times. It's just going to be a much nicer experience. And that was it. That's all the things.